back again after a quick intermission and quick drive down to the neighbours. We landed at Melbourne Airport. I rang Mum. We'll be home in around an hour and a half, I say, trying to stay composed. Oh, with a bit of luck I'll be here, she says, with a self-conscious laugh. It wasn't unusual. She once told me at her first real secretarial job with Dad, she blushed bright red when she answered the phone. I knew her well. There was no such thing as FaceTime, and Dad didn't believe in God. He was an atheist. He saw the worst of humanity through his father's World War I eyes, a father and son who both fought in back-to-back wars. He recognised the pain in the blue eyes that he inherited from his father. I probably got them too. Speaking of experience back in the fields of Belgium and southern France was rare when Dad was a child, but now as an adult relationships flourished thanks to Mum, who was committed to seeing father and son reunited. Their relationship had become estranged before Dad joined the Navy. His parents, Frank and Alice, divorced. Grandpa Frank was spared Huntington's disease. Therefore, our family had the safe gene. Mum told me Dad's opinion of his parents' divorce was based on his mother's anguish and real fear, I suppose, of nursing a middle-aged, incapacitated man post-World War II. It must have been terrifying. She was a young mother with 4 children. She probably suffered panic attacks like me. Dad always said we were alike. I hated him saying that because he barely tolerated his mother until he met Mum. Grandma Allie would rarely visit, usually at Easter and Christmas. She'd arrive in her black Zephyr with Venetian blinds in the back and a fan on the dashboard. Her basket would always be full of colourful gifts of Cadbury chocolate eggs with fluffy chickens atop. I loved her. She was full of cheek like me. Dad would criticise her unfairly, I thought. We visited my great-uncle Stanley once. I have a memory of this dark house with really dark lead-light windows in the bathrooms. I also remember that night so clearly because with the darkness came a kind of an emotional darkness, because Stanley had Huntington's disease. I possibly would have been only maybe 6 and witnessed his spasms and his anguish and the whole family's anguish in this dark sort of house in Camberwell it was. So he was my great uncle Stanley on Grandpa Frank's side. We witnessed his uncontrollable shaking spasms. In the White Holden station wagon on the way home, I was the middle seat in the back, middle child, middle seat. I secretly listened to my mum and Dad as I watched the speedometer arm swing as Dad used the accelerator, the front vinyl bench showing damp little handprints between my parents. My hands were sweating. Stanley had told them of his suicide plan. They did not know when, but they knew he surely would. My little sister was asleep in the back, and my brother was playing with the train. They didn't know I'd heard them over the radio. Sadly, weeks later, he enacted his plan. That train driver's life changed forever, I imagine. The television war was beamed into the living room of baby boomers' childhoods, some old enough to find themselves conscripted, like Steve. Television was restricted viewing in our house. Dad could not protect us from the world or the ABC News. I think he tried. The black and white images from the tiny television in the corner of our lounge room was often glimpsed by innocent eyes. A Vietnamese girl naked, napalm burns scarring her pubescent body, grieving mothers holding their dead infants, rocking and wailing, a cruel and reckless war. Finally, the people rose up. Well, we did in our family anyway, here in Australia. A little blonde 10-year-old girl never forgot those horrendous images. Neither did my social reforming parents, active young people with a vision for our future, free from wars. I was aware very young of such things, listening to my family's collective opinions. Mum insisted on family time, free from the horrors of television news. Those family dinners would inevitably turn to education or Australian politics. If it was about school or homework, I would shiver. Dad would terrify me, testing me. You must work hard and go to university, he would lecture. He worked hard to educate himself at Melbourne University post-World War II. He studied politics and I think social sciences, but I know that he joined the Anti-Fascist Society at Monash University, and he met the doctor who delivered my children. In my experience, understanding our parents or grandparents, it doesn't really happen until we become adults ourselves. Our childhoods were filled with adventures. We had multiple family members that would come to the farm, and that was a gift for our family. The Gippsland Diamond Creek was our boundary as kids. We could fish or play in its shallow waters. Native blackfish often reeled in on our homemade tea tree rods, cleaned and pan-fried for breakfast. We rode our ponies everywhere. Bareback, crow feathers in our hair, hiding from the adults until they arrived in utes, overflowing with volunteers to move the irrigation pipes. Dad and Grandpa Frank would cooee towards the creek to round us up. Adult cousins and uncles, a little inebriated, were on hand to help. We would groan and disclose ourselves from various hiding places, walking into the blazing sun, rarely with hats on. Grandma Mac would white zinc our vulnerable noses, and like the warriors we were, we would get to work with the adults, stripping off our riding clothes down to our gumboots and cottontails, unlinking the joiners, watching the golden brackish water spilling out as the linkages came apart, ponies grazing the boundary, waiting for us little ruffians. Our first ponies were purchased from Sunday Reed near Heidelberg. They had the biggest heads. It was easy to see they were related. Apparently no one seemed to own them. Sunday wanted the property as an artist's haven. Dad often recited his experience when he and Grandpa Frank took possession of our unique equines. He was a great storyteller. Long stories recited and mimed while we ate lunch or dinners at our huge weekend communal table. We are not having any animals unless they lay eggs or produce food. We have no intention, however, of dining on horse in the near future. Dad would mimic Sunday's posh voice, pretending to smoke. His stage was our Tasmanian oak table during big dinners and lunches. I would run out the back door, ponytail flying, shoving a sandwich down my throat. Meeting Shadow and Katie, my relationship with my weird long-faced equines began. Because between those big dark eyes in the middle of their faces, there floated a big-brained, kind and patient. A clan of kids, family and friends learnt to ride on them. My sister Jo and my Sunday cousin were my best friends. An early photograph, my first playtime with my cousin, taken to mark the occasion, the black and white photo clearly confirming the different upbringings we had experienced so far. My baby hair finally chopped off to suit my personality, wearing dungarees, a short-sleeved shirt, and a plaster cast over my right forearm, holding hands with my cuz in the white bobby socks and starched pretty dress. Joanna the Goanna, my dad would call my sister Jo. My father adored her. He just showed it in a different way. but I'd never such an affectionate nickname. I wanted his approval. Hindsight can be an enemy when you're young, then like an old friend in older age. Mum asked me to sleep with her that fateful night. We lay silently side by side, me in Dad's spot. I was hollow. If it wasn't for my mum holding my hand, I would have drowned in my own tears. I must stay strong for her, I told myself. I finally plucked up my courage and I said to Mum, I can smell him. I sobbed. Of course you can, darling. He was here this morning. I asked if I could burn some incense. Dad hated incense. Mum smiled. It was because of the war. He said he covered up the smell of death and burning bodies in India, she whispered. Why did he never say, I asked. I only did it to cover up marijuana smells, I hesitated. I think he knew that, she smiled and squeezed my hand. We cried, we dozed, we drifted into a surreal sleep. My mum, so young, Bill, her lover and husband, took a trail ride that day, only to be brought home in the tray of a red Toyota Ute. Firefly galloped home unscathed, a graze over one eye. Dad came home dead, unloaded from the vehicle, his oilskin coat and boots neatly hung on the coat rack by the door to the rider's lounge. It had been raining, Gippsland drizzle, a booking for two. The guests rang and cancelled due to the weather. Dad rang them back and they came. My parents had a $350,000 mortgage. Interest rates were 18%. And on the 28th of December 1987, my brave mother hugged her only true love, my dad. She told me she squeezed him so hard, his last stale breath of air hit her cheek. Then she had to milk the cows.